What if everything you thought you knew about Melania Trump was wrong? The former First Lady just delivered a speech that's sending shockwaves through social media and challenging long-held beliefs. People are calling it a turning point, a moment that could redefine women's empowerment for a generation. But what exactly did Melania say? And why is it resonating so deeply with women from all walks of life? The White House loomed before her, a grand symbol of power and responsibility. Melania Trump stood at its threshold, her face a mask of composure. But beneath the surface, uncertainty churned. She had never aspired to be First Lady, never dreamed of the spotlight that now burned so brightly upon her. In those first days, the halls of the White House felt alien and cold. Melania moved through them like a ghost, her stilettos echoing on marble floors that had borne the footsteps of history's most influential women. The pressure was immense. Every gesture, every word scrutinized and dissected by an eager media and a curious public. Cultural expectations weighed heavily on her shoulders. As an immigrant, Melania faced additional scrutiny. Her accent, her background, her very presence in the White House became fodder for debate and criticism. The whispers followed her everywhere. Was she fit to be First Lady? Did she even want to be? In private moments, Melania grappled with her own doubts. She had built a life for herself, carved out an identity as a model, a businesswoman, a mother. Now, it felt as though that identity was being stripped away, replaced by a title she wasn't sure she wanted or deserved. But as the days turned to weeks, something began to shift. It wasn't a sudden epiphany, but a gradual awakening. Melania found herself drawn to the stories of the women who had come before her, the First Ladies who had faced their own challenges and carved out their own legacies. One afternoon, standing in the White House Portrait Gallery, Melania's gaze lingered on the face of Eleanor Roosevelt. The strength in those painted eyes seemed to speak directly to her, challenging her to find her own voice, her own purpose. It was in that moment that Melania realized she had a choice. She could remain the reluctant First Lady, always on the periphery, or she could forge her own path. The decision didn't erase her doubts or instantly transform her into a confident public figure, but it was a start. Melania began to take small steps, venturing out into the role that had been thrust upon her. She chose causes close to her heart, focusing on children's well-being and anti-bullying initiatives. With each public appearance, each carefully chosen statement, Melania felt a little more of her old confidence returning. She wasn't trying to fit into someone else's mold of what a First Lady should be. Instead, she was creating her own definition, one that felt true to who she was. The transformation wasn't immediate or easy. There were still moments of doubt, still days when the spotlight felt too harsh. But Melania had found a spark of purpose, a reason to step forward instead of back. She began to see her position not as a burden, but as an opportunity, a platform from which she could make a difference. The headlines screamed across news channels and social media. Melania Trump found herself at the center of a media firestorm. Every move she made, every word she spoke, was dissected and analyzed with ruthless precision. The criticism came from all sides, a relentless barrage that threatened to drown out her voice before she had even found it. Gold digger, some called her. Trophy wife, others sneered. The accusations flew thick and fast, each one a sharp barb aimed at her character, her intelligence, her very right to occupy the role of First Lady. Social media erupted with memes mocking her accent, her modeling past, her seemingly uncomfortable public appearances. Late-night comedians sharpened their teeth on jokes at her expense, reducing her to a caricature of the silent, beautiful wife. Melania retreated further into herself, the walls of the White House becoming both a sanctuary and a prison. She felt the weight of every harsh word, every cruel judgment. In quiet moments, away from the prying eyes of the public, she questioned her ability to withstand the pressure. The constant scrutiny left her feeling exposed, vulnerable in a way she had never experienced before. One particularly brutal news cycle focused on her Be Best initiative. What was meant to be a positive campaign promoting children's well-being became fodder for ridicule. Critics called it vague and hypocritical, questioning how she could champion anti-bullying efforts while her husband's behavior on social media seemed to contradict those very principles. The backlash was swift and merciless. Melania found herself caught in an impossible position. Speak out and risk further criticism for overstepping her perceived boundaries. Stay silent and be accused of complicity or indifference. The pressure to be the perfect First Lady, to embody grace and poise while under constant attack, felt overwhelming. The turning point came unexpectedly. During a visit to a children's hospital, away from the glare of the main press corps, Melania found herself sitting with a young girl battling a serious illness. As they talked, the girl's mother watched with tears in her eyes. "You're so strong," the woman said to Melania, squeezing her hand. "Don't let them break you." Those simple words of encouragement, offered in a moment of genuine human connection, sparked something in Melania. She realized that for every cruel comment, there were people who saw beyond the headlines, who recognized her struggle and her potential to make a difference. Slowly, cautiously, Melania began to find her footing. She threw herself into her work, focusing on the causes that mattered to her. She learned to let the criticism wash over her, drawing strength from the small victories and the lives she touched. In private meetings with her staff, she began to assert herself more, shaping her initiatives with a clearer vision and purpose. As she prepared for her speech at the Women's Empowerment event, Melania reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The fear and uncertainty of those early days in the White House seemed distant now. She had weathered the storm of criticism, emerging not unscathed, but undeniably stronger. A seismic shift rippled through the White House corridors, heralding a transformation in Melania Trump's role as First Lady. Like a dormant volcano awakening, her passion for women's empowerment began to stir, reshaping her approach to her position. In the quiet moments between official engagements, Melania immersed herself in the world of women's issues. She pored over reports of gender inequality, researched the challenges faced by women in different cultures, and engaged in long conversations with her staff about the potential for change. The more she learned, the more a fire ignited within her. One evening, an article about a young girl defying local customs to pursue education in a rural community captivated Melania. The girl's determination struck a chord, mirroring Melania's own journey as an immigrant who had carved out a life in a new country. This story became a catalyst, igniting a fire within her to use her platform for change. As Melania delved deeper into these issues, her perspective shifted dramatically. Criticisms that once wounded her now fueled her resolve. She recognized her unique position offered a chance to amplify unheard voices. Her experiences as an immigrant, a woman in the public eye, and First Lady provided invaluable insights. Those closest to Melania noticed the change. There was a new energy about her, a longtime aide confided. She started asking more questions, demanding more detailed briefings on women's issues. It was like watching someone wake up to their own potential. A visit to a women's shelter proved pivotal. As survivors shared their stories of resilience and mutual support, something crystallized within Melania. That night, she penned a letter to herself, confronting fears, acknowledging growth, and making a promise to be a catalyst for change. As she prepared for the Women's Empowerment event, Melania reflected on her journey. She thought of the young girl fighting for education, the survivors at the shelter, her own struggles and triumphs. Each story had shaped her understanding of womanhood in today's world. The impending speech wasn't just words on a page, it was a declaration of intent, a sharing of newfound purpose. As Melania stood backstage, a calm settled over her. She was no longer the reluctant First Lady, but a woman with a mission, ready to use her voice to uplift others. The words she was about to speak would mark the beginning of a new chapter, not just for her, but for the women she aimed to empower. The room hummed with anticipation as Melania Trump stepped onto the stage. The soft rustle of clothing and whispered conversations faded to silence. Bright lights illuminated her figure, casting a soft glow on her face. Gone was the hesitation that had once marked her public appearances. In its place was a quiet confidence, a sense of purpose that radiated from her very being. Melania's mind flashed back to moments before, standing backstage. Her heart had raced, doubts creeping in. Would they listen? You understand? She had taken a deep breath, steadying herself. Now, as she faced the audience, that moment of uncertainty felt distant. Her gaze swept across the room, taking in the expectant faces before her. In the front row, her eyes locked with those of a young girl, barely in her teens. The girl's determined expression stirred something in Melania's heart, a reflection of her own journey, perhaps. As Melania began to speak, her voice carried a warmth and conviction that caught many off guard. "I stood in those historic halls," she said, "surrounded by the echoes of powerful women who had come before me, and I felt lost." The admission sent a ripple through the audience. Here was vulnerability they hadn't expected. Melania's voice grew stronger as she recounted her awakening. Their stories became my story. Their struggles, my mission. The audience leaned in, captivated by the transformation unfolding before them. Women nodded in recognition, some wiping away tears. We cannot ignore the harsh realities that women face, Melania continued, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. 1 in 3 women worldwide have experienced physical or sexual violence. The statistic hung in the air, a stark reminder of the work still to be done. Leaning forward, her eyes alight with determination, Melania announced, "Today, I'm launching a global network of support for women facing adversity. We will use our voices, our resources, and our shared experiences to lift each other up." As she outlined her vision, the room buzzed with excitement. The skepticism that had tinged the air at the beginning of her speech dissolved, replaced by a palpable sense of connection. Women turned to each other, sharing their own stories, inspired by the unexpected ally they'd found in Melania Trump. The speech concluded to a standing ovation, more than just polite acknowledgement. It was a recognition of a shared journey, of the power of vulnerability and purpose. As Melania left the stage, the energy in the room was electric, a testament to the impact of her words and the hope they had ignited. As the applause faded, a charged atmosphere lingered. Women who had entered as strangers now huddled in animated clusters, exchanging contact information and sharing stories with newfound urgency. The air buzzed with energy, a collective realization that their individual struggles were part of a larger, shared experience. Melania stood at the stage's edge, her chest tight with a mix of emotions, relief, pride, and excitement for what lay ahead. She had laid bare her vulnerabilities and dreams, witnessing the impact rippling through the crowd. This was only the beginning. Her vision was ambitious and personal. Melania had painted a world where women's voices were amplified, where girls everywhere had access to education, where women in leadership roles were the norm. She had backed this vision with hard facts about the global gender pay gap and women's underrepresentation in power structures. But Melania hadn't just highlighted problems. She had offered solutions. Her cornerstone initiative was a mentorship program connecting experienced women leaders with girls from underprivileged backgrounds. "Every successful woman has the power to inspire the next generation," she had explained. "By sharing our stories, we show young girls their dreams are achievable." As the last audience members filed out, a young woman approached Melania. "Your words, they've given me courage," she said, her voice wavering. "I've been hesitating to apply for a management position, but now I know I have to try." Melania clasped the woman's hand. "You're exactly why we need to keep pushing forward," she said softly. "Your voice matters." Just then, Melania's phone buzzed. The message was from a world leader she had confided in during her time as First Lady, a woman who had once shared her struggles in navigating international politics. Their conversations about shared challenges had forged a bond transcending political boundaries. The message read, "I'm in. Let's change the world." Melania's mind raced with possibilities. The speech had been a gamble, a public declaration of her intentions. Now, the network she had envisioned was taking shape, crossing borders and transcending divides. She glanced at the worn photograph in her pocket, her grandmother, who had faced unimaginable hardships. This image had grounded her during the darkest days of public scrutiny, reminding her of the strength in her veins. As Melania left the stage, she thought of the young girl in the front row, the spark in her eyes. That spark, multiplied across millions of women worldwide, had the power to ignite a global transformation. The speech was a crucial first step, but the real work was just beginning. The buzz of excited voices filled the air as women streamed out of the auditorium, their eyes alight with newfound purpose. Melania Trump's words had ignited something powerful within them. As she watched from the wings, Melania felt a mix of exhilaration and trepidation. She had taken a leap, sharing her vulnerabilities and vision with the world. Social media exploded with reactions. The hashtag #MelaniaEmpowers trended worldwide, with women sharing their stories of struggle and triumph. Yet, amid the outpouring of support, pockets of skepticism remained. Some questioned the sincerity of Melania's transformation, while others criticized her for not speaking out sooner. For many in the audience, the criticism faded into background noise. They had seen something genuine in Melania's eyes and voice. Rebecca Chen, a young entrepreneur from California, found herself inspired to launch a mentorship program for immigrant women in tech. Hearing Melania speak about her journey as an immigrant, about feeling like an outsider, it hit home, Rebecca explained. Across the country, women began organizing local meetups and support groups. In Ohio, Sarah Thompson, a single mother of three, started a weekly gathering for women to share resources in childcare. Melania talked about the strength we find in supporting each other, Sarah said. It made me realize I didn't have to do everything alone. As days passed, the impact of Melania's speech continued to ripple outward. Women's rights organizations reported surges in volunteers and donations. Companies faced pressure to address gender pay gaps and promote women to leadership positions. Teenage girls took to social media, celebrating their ambitions and encouraging peers to dream big. Unexpectedly, several male business leaders and politicians emerged as vocal supporters of Melania's message, pledging to implement more inclusive policies in their organizations. For Melania, the response was overwhelming. She felt a sense of purpose stronger than ever before. One message particularly caught her eye, from Maria, a young immigrant girl in the front row during her speech. "You showed me that it's okay to be scared sometimes," Maria wrote. "But you also taught me that being scared doesn't mean you can't be strong." Maria shared how she had arrived in America recently, struggling with the language and feeling isolated. "Your words gave me hope. I want to be like you when I grow up, someone who uses their voice to help others find theirs." Melania's eyes welled with tears as she read Maria's words. She thought of her own journey, of the doubts and fears she had overcome. In sharing her story, she had not only found her own strength, but had also empowered others to find theirs. The sun had barely risen when Melania Trump stepped into her office, her heels clicking against the polished floor. Months had passed since her groundbreaking speech, but the energy of that moment still coursed through her veins. She paused at the window, gazing out at the city waking up below. The world looked different now, filled with possibility and purpose. Her phone buzzed incessantly, a constant reminder of the movement she had inadvertently sparked. Melania scrolled through the messages, each one a testament to the ripple effect of her words. Women from all walks of life reached out, sharing their stories of newfound courage and determination. A smile played at the corners of her mouth as she read about Sarah, a single mother in Ohio who had started a community support group, and Rebecca, an immigrant entrepreneur launching a mentorship program for women in tech. But with this surge of empowerment came new challenges. Melania's calendar was now filled with speaking engagements, strategy meetings, and late-night calls with women's rights organizations. She found herself navigating a complex landscape of politics and activism, a far cry from the world of fashion and high society she had once known. As she settled into her chair, Melania's eyes fell on a framed photo on her desk. It was a candid shot from her speech, capturing the moment she had laid bare her vulnerabilities to the world. The memory of that day still sent a shiver down her spine. The fear, the exhilaration, the overwhelming sense of connection with the women in that room. Her assistant knocked softly, entering with reports on the mentorship program. Early results showed promise, with participants reporting increased confidence and ambition. But critics still questioned her motives, skeptical of her transformation from reluctant First Lady to women's rights advocate. These doubts stung, but Melania had learned to let them fuel her determination rather than dampen her spirit. In a video call with international women's rights leaders, they discussed strategies for addressing gender-based violence, closing the pay gap, and increasing women's representation in government. A leader from Kenya asked how to sustain momentum. Melania replied, "We keep sharing our stories, we keep showing up for each other, and we remember that change doesn't happen overnight. It's in the small actions, the daily choices to lift each other up." As night fell, Melania stood at the window, reflecting on the day. The path ahead was challenging, balancing advocacy with other responsibilities. But she felt alive, driven by a purpose larger than herself. Her mind turned to the future, expanding her initiatives, empowering more women to lead. The journey was far from over, but Melania was ready for the next chapter, determined to create lasting change for women worldwide. Melania Trump's transformation from reluctant First Lady to women's empowerment advocate challenges societal expectations. Her journey reminds us that growth can emerge from unexpected places, inspiring us to look beyond surface judgments. As Melania navigates her role, her story prompts us to examine our own potential for change and impact. Her speech's ripples continue to spread, encouraging women worldwide to find their voices and support one another. Melania's evolution invites us to reflect on our experiences and positions. How can we use our unique perspectives to lift up others and create positive change? As we consider Melania's journey, we're left with a profound question. What untapped potential lies within each of us, waiting to be unleashed for the greater good?